Good afternoon or good morning, everybody, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us today on this Parallels webinar. Secure your digital workspace, controlled, publish applications and secure your browser with Parallels. My name is Ian Lee, and joining me today is Chris Marks, who's a Principal Outbound Product Manager. So hi, Chris, how are you doing?
All right, Ian, thanks. How are you?
Jolly good, yeah, I'm fine too. So as you can see from the slide, I'm one of the technical product marketing managers here at Parallels. We have a large group that's on the line today, so I want to thank you all for joining us. Before we get started, I'd just like to remind you that if you have any questions, you can submit them through the GoToWebinar console, and we're going to make sure that we have time both as we go through and finally at the end as well of the presentation, just to make sure we can answer them. So today's webinar will be recorded and a replay link will be sent out to all of you who registered. So feel free to share that amongst any interested colleagues at your company. So first of all, today we're going to start off by reviewing some of the market insights based on a couple of recent industry surveys. Then Chris is going to walk you through an application delivery journey over time, how that's expanded, how that's changed. Then we're going to go into some of the Parallels products and how they can help you in those areas. And then we're going to wrap up with some industry insights and then finally finish up, like I say, with the question and answer session. So let's get moving with some of those market insights here. So when we look at the Verizon data breach investigation report that came out earlier this year, one of the themes is clear that attackers continue to focus on the easiest path to compromise. The two top categories we see here are web applications and stolen credentials. And together they account for over half of all the breaches that were seen. And this is seen throughout 2024. So this reinforces the critical importance of securing your applications that are exposed to the internet and also on reducing your reliance on those static credentials, which remain highly vulnerable to theft and reuse. The next item at 22% there was phishing and social engineering, which highlights the human factor involved in these breaches. Employees remain a primary target and attackers exploit trust just as much as they exploit technology. And the vulnerability exploits demonstrate that the patching and configuration management, they remain fundamental, yet they're consistently neglected and consistently exploited. And then finally, we had the other causes such as errors, misuse, and that serves as a reminder that even with the well-intentioned actions, they can open the door up to risk. So the takeaway from this, organizations have got to balance their technical defenses with both user protection, ensuring a layered security that addresses your apps, your credentials, your people, and your patches. When we look at the next survey, this was done by us here at Parallels earlier in the year, towards the end of 2024 into 2025, where we surveyed around 600 IT professionals. I think it was like 660, something like that, on their concerns with security and also on their use of cloud. But the security stuff really sort of dominated the conversation there. So ransomware, malware attacks, they stood out as the number one concern, which is unsurprising given the frequency and cost of such incidents across various industries, really. IT leaders were signaling that these attacks remain the most disruptive and feared threats to their environments, but that cloud vulnerabilities followed close behind. Organizations understand that while providers secure the infrastructure, misconfigurations or um, misconfigurations or unpatched services within the environment remain prime target for attackers. Interestingly, though, human error then came in, and that's things like weak passwords or employee negligence. They continue to be recognized as a significant risk factor. Despite the heavy investment in tools and people, that make mistakes and create gaps for adversaries to exploit. And finally, social engineering is on the radar, but it ranks lower perhaps because respondents associate that more with endpoint security or user training than with the cloud itself. So the overall message from this survey was that IT leaders are concerned about direct high impact threats like the ransomware, but they still acknowledge that human behavior and trust play a critical role in security outcomes. So when we look at these two surveys, a consistent picture emerges. The attackers and IT leaders are focused on the same pain points, but they're just coming at it from different angles. The data breach investigation report shows how the breaches actually happen through the web apps, the stolen credentials, the phishing, the vulnerabilities, and the IT professionals in the parallel survey highlight the biggest concern, which are ransomware, malware, cloud vulnerabilities, the human error. So put together, the message is clear that threat actors are exploiting the exact areas that the IT leaders already know are the weakest links. So the gap isn't on awareness, like everybody out there knows where the problems are, but the gap comes to the execution and the ability to prevent those attacks and those breaches from happening. And that's sort of where application delivery comes in. So as Chris is going to demonstrate, modern solutions that Parallels has, such as RAS and browser isolation, don't just make the apps easier to access, they fundamentally reshape how the applications are delivered to the end users. So by centralizing control, containing that risky activity, reducing reliance on the end user judgments, organizations can directly mitigate the top threats highlighted in both reports. So as we move into this next section, we can explore how the secure application delivery model turn these recurring vulnerabilities into controllable risks and improve your flexibility and productivity. So Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for that. So as Ian has just kind of introduced the whole security landscape, most of you I'm sure are familiar with a lot of the things Ian was talking about, and some of you may have even completed some of those survey questions. You'll almost certainly have completed some kind of survey from someone because it's in the top three of any survey at any senior IT level executive is this application security kind of side of things. And that's kind of where we're going to take a bit of a step back, because what we want to do is kind of show you why Parallels is positioned where it is. Sometimes we kind of forget and we just launch into this word and say, hey, we're all hybrid and all this kind of stuff. But we just wanted to take a bit of a step back and show you why. Okay, let's go back in time. So back in time, a long, long time ago, from an IT point of view, before 1990, that means, pretty much the only way you can deliver applications to people was locally installing the application on a device that sat on a user's desk, and then take on board all of the impact of that. So that often included physically sending people to those locations to update those applications. It always involved the data being needed inside that application being resident on that device. And that meant if that device got stolen or compromised, it really put that corporate data at risk. So then a whole industry created itself around trying to secure those endpoint devices. And most of you are using security kind of posture that helps in that regard today. As the 1990s kind of came, we started to see this growth of a thing called virtual applications. Back then it was called server-based computing, right? So this took your entire desktop or a large amount of your desktop applications, stuck it in a data center, and then the application never actually made it to the endpoint. So that now if that endpoint gets stolen or compromised, the application isn't there. The data isn't there. You've stolen a piece of hardware, but you haven't got access to the apps and the data. That's kind of the theory. Now there were other benefits as well. So some of those benefits are dealing with poor networking connections. I've got a lot of data in my main head office that the applications need. If my users are on a laptop and they're a long, long way away from my office, causing me performance problems, here my applications don't move. They stay exactly where they are in the data center or now in the cloud. This is as time moves on. And the users gain remote access to them. This is massive security improvement, as well as a whole lot of other things, right? What has happened as time has moved on is the advent of software as a service. Now, the challenge that companies then have to face with software as a service is that some of the advantages you gained by virtualizing your applications are gone. Because I'm now delivering my software as a service app into a web browser that's on that local machine. Now, many software as a service providers are simply reskinning their application install inside a tab in a web browser. So it functions pretty much the same as it did before, except now it's in a web browser. So the data now again reappears on my local machine. The security attack surface re-increases. And this is kind of the world we find ourselves in. The other thing is I'm leaving these bubbles, the bubbles are changing over time just to indicate the fact that your consumption of these applications changes over time. We're not saying people hopping from one of these bubbles to another. The situation very commonly now is you've got all three of these types of applications, right? You've got some that might need local installation still, some are being delivered remotely, and then the advent of SaaS means you've got yet another way to deliver these applications, which now I've got to rethink my security for because it's shifted from the solution I had before. And this is where browser isolation enters the fore, right? So in exactly the same way that local applications became virtualized and they were delivered to an endpoint remotely via a thing called brokering, that's exactly the principle behind browser isolation, okay? So the idea is that instead of software as a service application appearing on my user's local browser, the software as a service application appears in a browser that's under my complete control as an organization, and then that browser session is brokered to the user's local browser so that there's no data on the endpoint. So in principle, you're achieving the same kind of security process as you were when you virtualized applications. But now I'm doing the same thing with software as a service. So if someone were to remove that device, there's no data on that device at all. There's nothing resident inside those browser tabs apart from a link securely into that browser isolation service. So that is kind of the principle. And as I say, one of these blobs is not disappearing to be replaced by one of the other blobs. In general, most organizations are dealing with all of these blobs, right? So over time, yes, things have got more secure, but they've become more variable from an application point of view. I've now got to deal as an IT guy with multiple ways of delivering applications. So one of the growing challenges I've got is how do I deliver that to my kind of normal humans, my normal employees that aren't IT people? How do I deliver their applications that they need to work in such a way that it makes their working day easier without having to kind of scratch their head and wonder what on earth is going on from an application point of view? The stats that have just arrived there from the right-hand side of the screen, that goes back to the survey that Ian was talking about before, and it just kind of gives you an indication. Over 80% of the organizations we spoke to, at least a quarter of their applications are software as a service. But equally, that means 75% of their applications are still installed applications. So the companies are still dealing with this, right? And this is a pretty recent survey. So companies are still dealing with this. We're expecting them to be dealing with it for quite some time to come. Is it changing? Yes. Is the SaaS bubble getting bigger? Yes. Is it replacing local apps and virtual apps right now? No. The proportions are changing, but most organizations are still going to be dealing with all three of those lumps of application type, if you like, for some time to come. That is the why. So that is why Parallels talks about hybrid, not just from a cloud point of view, but from an application point of view. So I'm not going to go through the kind of the content of this entire slide, because what I want to talk about is simplicity, and this slide looks far from simple, okay? But we also want to talk about choice. This is what this slide really indicates to you, right? So I can consume my application from anywhere. I can consume it from an on-premises piece of infrastructure. I can consume it directly inside the public cloud. It can be local on my device, and inside the demo, I'll give you a little bit of a look at that. Equally, I can directly access those applications securely via software as a service. So as an administrator, that's the complex side of things, right? That's the thing where you're dealing with all this choice and you're presenting it to your users in a consistent way. Underneath the line is where your users exist, and they just want to get on with their job. They do not want to worry about, when I click on this icon, where is the application coming from? Because if it's coming from here, it's going to work okay, and if it's coming from here, it's not. So, two things we're going to talk about. One of them is Parallels RAS. Okay, so a lot of people on this call may well already be Parallels RAS customers, so I don't want to kind of dwell on this point too much. But these are the first two blobs, right? This is local apps moving into virtual applications. So this is how I deliver virtual applications, or at least up until now, Parallels RAS was pretty much the way I virtualized my applications on my desktops, and then I delivered those via a broker back down to my endpoint. What's changed recently is we now have the ability to connect to local apps and configure local apps. Now, we do this in a different way to most, in fact, all of the others in the market, right? What normally happens when I'm delivering local apps in other solutions is I have to gain this virtual session first, and then from that virtual session, I come back to my local machine, open the application on the local machine. That is not the case here. We're taking a different stance, okay? We're treating the client as the point at which we want our application listing to arrive, so that all the user actually has to do is open the client. 5 of the icons on that client are launching remote, secure applications. 1 of those icons, or 2, 3, however many of those icons, are directly launching local applications, and they are not entering the Parallels RAS backend at all. The client is being used as the method of access. Now, what this means is, from a normal user's point of view, what we're working towards is that all of their applications are in, all their application icons are in one place. So if you as an IT administrator change how you deliver the application, the user may not notice. The icon remains the same. I open the application just like we did before. Today it was local on my machine. Tomorrow it's being remotely delivered. Or vice versa. It was remotely delivered. Now, for whatever reason, it needs to be local on my machine. So that's what we're going for, and that's what we'll see in a demo in a little while. From a software as a service point of view, remember what we're doing with browser isolation is we're taking the software as a service application and we're moving it to be a secure, hardened browser instance. Once that software as a service application is initiated and it's passed all of these tests, this is all kind of zero trust stuff, right? I'm logging in to my Parallels browser isolation session. From there, I'm logging into my software as a service application. So it stands to reason that what you could do is in your software as a service application, you say only accept connections from inside a secure Parallels browser isolation session. And what that means is, even if the user has the correct credentials, if I connect directly to that SaaS provider, it will not let me in. I must go through Parallels browser isolation in order to gain access to this. Okay. So up until this point, we have hosted this Parallels browser isolation instance. So you, as an administrator, log into a console, configure your browser isolation. We are then responsible for spinning up secure containers. Those containers contain a web browser. When a user uses that web browser, it routes through to their SaaS application. When they shut that browser tab down, it completely destroys that container, so there's no remnant information. Again, all going back to the security posture. On the user's local machine, nothing changes. They still use, for example, Google Chrome. And as we said, just like virtualizing applications, we're now virtualizing a web browser. So what happens is, inside their local browser tab of the normal browser they would use for other everyday things, we're now embedding that Parallels browser isolation browser inside the main window of, let's say, Google Chrome, for example. So they don't have to learn how to use a different browser. All of their bookmarks and shortcuts and all that kind of thing stay intact. But what now is brokering that software as a service application securely so that no data is on the endpoint. So up until now, this has been hosted by Parallels. What we've just put into tech preview, and again, this is customer demand that's kind of pushing us forward here, is configuration of Parallels browser isolation from a central portal. But when I spin these containers up, I actually want control over where those containers are created, which have those secure browsers in them. So this allows an organization to run those containers on premises, if that's what they wanted to do, or they could run them in a cloud tenant wherever they really wanted to, right? So this is called private access. This is in technical preview right now, but the principle is the same. What changes is I'm in complete control of the resources I give those web applications. I determine what hardware, software, everything else it runs on. Just needs to be a Linux virtual machine, and I'll go through a little bit of how you set that up in just a second. But I now am able to verify the level of security. So it's all very well us as Parallel saying to you, oh yeah, this is secure, it fits with your zero trust approach, yeah, tick, tick, tick. Here, you are now able to be in control. So rather than just trusting us that that's the case, we are now enabling you to take control of that yourselves. Okay, so that is currently in technical preview, and you'll get a link at the end of this presentation. If any of you want to try this out, you can absolutely fill in a couple of forms. We'll take your contact info, and we can give you access to that technical preview for Parallels browser isolation. So just to show you a little bit, right? This is the admin pane for Parallels browser isolation. You can see that I've got kind of security violations across the top. Active users are just me. Apologies. It's not a full demo. This is literally just me showing you how this stuff works. Okay, so that's why you'll see lots of number ones everywhere. And inside Parallels browser isolation, you go into the console and you literally configure applications, right? You can either configure a secure browser or a secure application. You can also copy the application URL from here, and that will become important in the next piece of the demo that I give you. But if I just show you quickly how they work, they're very simple to set up. You give it the URL you want it to start, who from your identity provider can access it, which domains are allowed, so I can enable external domain access. You need that for authentication, or disable it. I can also start adding things like policies. So policies basically say you only can access that application between certain times. You can print yes or no. You can use bidirectional clipboard, yes or no. When I'm using the application, do I allow my user to download things, yes or no? Those kind of things are all in there. And it gives me a whole bunch of insights and okay, yes, this is just Chris. And that's fine. But what I wanted to show you was appliances. This is the piece that's in tech preview. So right now, the appliances in tech preview apply to Hyper-V, ESX, and Azure. So if you've got any of those three platforms, you can download the image from there. Then you go into the administration guide, and in the appendix of the administration guide, you go into the appliance registration piece. Okay, and in that appliance registration piece is step-by-step guidance in how to configure that appliance. The long story short is all you do at your end is create a Linux virtual machine based on one of those hypervisors. And you can obviously create more than one Linux virtual machine, but that's ultimately what you do, and you put that appliance on the Linux virtual machine that you've created and then follow the instructions. Okay. So that's basically how it works. And then the PBI interface, Parallels Browser Isolation interface. This is what a user would see, but I'm going to kind of stop there because what I want to show you is what I was talking about earlier, which is more integration. So what I'm talking about here is in this scenario, let's say 20% of my applications are delivered in this way, but 80% of my applications are virtual. So they're still delivered as install apps that are inside my data center, or they're in Azure, or they're in AVD, or whatever else. Okay. This is where the second demo comes in. On this screen, you can see top right, that's what's called the Parallels user portal. What we've done now is we've started to use Parallels RAS. Okay. So traditionally, Parallels RAS is for giving you access either to full desktops or for installed applications running on a desktop or a server-based computing environment that's in a data center or in a cloud environment. Okay, so traditionally that's what's happened. User portal is completely 100% HTML5 access if that's what you want to do. Bottom right is the installed client. I happen to be using Mac OS here, right? But that's the installed client on the bottom right. And on the left, you can see, as an administrator, I've decided to put icons on the user's desktop as well. So if I just kind of start that off, what we're going to start to see, you can already perhaps see what I'm going to show you, right? So there's two applications there that say local Word and local Slack. That is going to be a demonstration of how to launch local applications. We're then going to see how to launch the Azure console via PBI, completely separate to the Parallels RAS applications. But the really important take-home point is, from a user's point of view, all these icons just look the same. The point of consumption is consistent. So the user is accessing these applications from the same kind of environment, from the same console, if you like. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an application, but that application is going to be on the user's endpoint now, right? That's where it says local device. So if I now say next on local device, I'm going to publish Excel. The target is the local target on the local device. I also get an option to say, okay, well, yeah, but what if Excel isn't there? Well, if Excel isn't there, I've got the opportunity to give it another URL. In this case, I'm going to get it to launch the online version of Excel, and I can test it if I wanted to, right? As can you. So if I now say next, then say enabled, local Excel appears. I'm just going to shuffle it into the local apps folder just because I'm nice and neat. So it sits with all the other local applications. From an administration point of view, it just makes it easier for me to remember what's where. Then I shift back to the client again, just refresh, and Excel appears. Okay, so it should appear in all three environments. So now, if I open up Excel, what you'll actually see is Excel opening, and can you see that's inside Mac OS? You can see the Mac kind of buttons up there that are visible to you. But I'm not going to show you how to use Excel, right? So that is launching a local application on my local device. That is not going into Parallels RAS and then coming back. That is literally going from that client locally into Microsoft Excel. Okay. Using the same principle, I can launch PBI, right? Now, when we were in PBI, I said, oh, you can copy the URL, the application URL, and this is where you need it, right? So all you do, publish a local application, but this time, when you're prompted for a URL, you paste the application URL of PBI. Now, if you want to, you can force them to use Chrome if it's available, or you could untick that box at the top. If you untick that box, it will just use whatever their default browser is instead, right? But I want to be consistent if I can. If you've got it, use Chrome. If you don't have Chrome, still launch the URL anyway. So now, again, it's not touching Parallels RAS. Now that client is going directly to Parallels browser isolation. Parallels browser isolation is then launching a browser inside a secure container. And you can see I've turned watermarking on and all this kind of stuff just to show you the additional security features that PBI can do. A user tries to navigate something I don't have access to, and it instantly denies me. Okay. Remember, Parallels browser isolation is a security feature. So this is delivering these kind of security options that you've got in there. Okay. But the kind of take home point is that's sitting next to all of my traditional applications. So I'm training my users once. Yeah. I'm teaching them how to use these clients once. I take care of the complexity in the back end. That's the job of IT, is to work out where these applications are going to come from. It's not the job of the vast majority of your employees. And this is really where we're going. So the point of contact is now the Parallels client. This is why our hybrid message really applies so well in this particular scenario. So it boils down to users get a desktop. Some of those applications are coming from one place, some are coming from somewhere else. We fully support AVD. So if that desktop or those applications are coming from AVD, then that will apply as well. And some of them are coming locally installed here. But as an administrator, you have complete control about how those application icons appear to your user, which is the real advantage of kind of tucking them all the way inside the Parallels client. So that's me done. That's the kind of demo side of things done. I did see some questions pop in, but I haven't had
Yeah, I
time
was
to read.
just going to raise those for you if you want. So first of all, can you white label? It says Parallels RAS. This is from Gopa, but I think it meant PBI. It came in as you were showing PBI. So the answer to that is yes, you can white label PBI. You can change it fully to your customer's look and feel for that. So I
You
think
can
that
white label
was
RAS
a
as
yes.
well, by the way, if
And,
if
yeah,
it was a Parallels RAS
yeah.
question.
And if it's a RAS, you can do the same as well. But yeah. And then is the cloud app available for Windows, Mac, and Linux? Yes, it is. It's also available on iOS. And there's also an HTML5 web client as well, and Android as well. I can't remember.
I
Is
think so.
there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's an Android as well. So that's that one. And then do we have API access for PBI to present it on their dashboard? I wasn't sure about this one, Chris. I don't. I can't remember. I think we might have to get back to you on that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's available yet.
Yeah.
The answer will be yes. I just don't. I'm not sure when. Let's take your details, GoPuff,
Yeah.
and I will find out the definitive answer.
Yeah. I've asked our.
Palos, yes. Palos RAS, definitely.
Yeah.
API is all integrated there. PBI is all going to be delivered via that URL. So I think the answer may be yes, but I don't want to say that in a live webinar. So let me get back to you about that.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, I've asked the question as well. So when we get the question, we'll get back to you. If it comes in during the webinar, we'll let you know. All right. Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for walking it through that. If anybody else has any other questions, please feel free, put them in the GoToWebinar console, and we'll come back to those again in a minute. So just to finish off before we get to those, I just wanted to go over a couple of industry validation points that we've just had for the products that Chris has just shown you. So beyond customer adoption, then the industry is also validating Parallels innovation and our leadership. Most recently, a couple of weeks ago, Gartner recognized Parallels as a visionary in its Magic Quadrant for desktop as a service. And that's desktop as a service in the broad term, not just our Parallels DAS product, but our RAS product as well. So this placement highlights the strong ability that we have to innovate and deliver those differentiated solutions in application and desktop delivery. And then back in July, I think it was early July, IDC named Parallels as a major player in its MarketScape for enterprise browsers, and application streaming. And that underscores the impact we have in the market and the trust we've built up with customers who are modernizing their application delivery strategies, as Chris has gone through. And so together, those analyst recognitions provide independent confirmation that you may be seeking, that it's not just competing, but it's also shaping the future of secure applications and delivery. So here are some trial links. If you wanted to try Parallels RAS, you can get, I think it's a 30-day free trial for that, and that's the place you go to there, or you can look on parallels.com and go to the product page for RAS, and you'll see the try button there. Parallels browser isolation is also available, so you can go there to find that. And then private access, as Chris mentioned, private access at the moment is in technical preview. So what that means is it's not a fully GA'd product yet. It's there and available for people to try out, for people to use, and then provide us with feedback on that so that we actually can iron out anything that may be wrong, or that there's things that people actually want put in, and it gives us a bit of time ahead of going GA to allow us to get feedback on the product, how it's implemented, how it's used, things that you may like to see that's not in there that we could get added in. So if you want to take part in that preview, you can go to that page or get to it from the Parallels browser isolation page. You can sign up, and as Chris said, we'll get back to you. We'll help you install that. We'll walk you through that, and then get your feedback from that as well. If you're interested in the Magic Quadrant report, we also have that available, so you can get that to download from our site as well. And that's in the resource and report section of our website. And then also in there is the 2025 cloud survey that we talked about at the beginning, that I talked about at the beginning, and Chris mentioned as well in his presentation. So if you'd like to view the rest of the results of that survey, you can get that there. So that's it. I'm just looking through the questions. We had a couple of other questions come in, so I'm just going to cover those off as well, and I'm not going to click anywhere. So yeah, we'll drop the links in. We'll also send you this presentation afterwards. Aditya, if I said that correctly, I'm sorry, but we'll get you those links. We'll plug them in and send those out to you. Just checking through. Does anything need installing on the client to use PBI, Chris?
No. So Parallels browser isolation is different. So it's worth noting this, right? So in the in the IDC diagram that Ian just put up, in fact, let me navigate back to it. My mouse works just fine. This is the diagram on the left. All those enterprise browsers, they don't all work in the same way, right? They are all classified as enterprise browsers, but a lot of them require you to install an enterprise browser onto the user's device. Now, in certain circumstances, that's good, and in certain circumstances, it's not. So if you are in that kind of market and you're looking for securing SaaS, please don't just pick a bunch of them and then say, yeah, we've got to pick 1 out of 5 of these, because they're all working in slightly different ways, which is a bit annoying from a customer's point of view, but we're all hitting particular use cases here, right? And in our perspective, we are treating it like the HTML5 browser is the user's endpoint, right? And we don't want to mess with that. And it's their browser. So we're not going to want to enforce a browser onto those people. So what happens is we're launching what's called a Chromium browser remotely, and then we're brokering that remote access to that Chromium browser inside their existing untouched, let's say Google Chrome browser, just to kind of bring it home a little bit, and it's inside a browser tab. If they open another secure application in PBI, that's a different browser tab, okay? And it's also using a different browser container in the back end. So those two software as a service applications don't mix, okay? Now, other solutions work in different ways, and many of them require you to install specific corporate browsers on your device and only use the corporate browsers. Here we're working in a different way. Okay, but no, you don't need a client install for that reason. From a PBI point of view, you also don't need to client install for Parallels RAS. By the way, it works perfectly fine using HTML5 client natively.
Cool. When is private access likely to be GA?
Okay, so currently it's just gone into technical preview. I'm a product manager, and if anyone knows any product managers out there, you will know that a product manager will never give you a date. They will give you maybe a quarter, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So we're currently working on Q1 2026, right? So it's just gone into tech preview. You've got a couple of months to run at it. For those of you who want to try it out, give us feedback. That gives us time to incorporate some of the feedback that some of those testing companies are doing with us. And then we're looking at Q1 2026 for that to be GA and commercially available.
Yeah, I literally went into tech preview 2 weeks ago, so it's fairly new, and that's part of the reason we wanted to get this webinar out to you guys to introduce you to it and see if you would like to be part of that tech preview as well. Just checking through the rest of the questions we got here. I think I put the links in, Aditya, so hopefully everybody's got those links in the question section. If you go there, you can find those links and maybe cut and paste them out so you can use them. And then Gopa, we're going to follow up with you on your questions after the webinar as well. And then the only other one I'm seeing is it sort of goes back to the SaaS apps that we were talking about before, Chris. And do we see many organizations who completely moved to SaaS apps? And I think we talked about this, but maybe we could just reiterate what we've been seeing with people using SaaS apps and maybe moving to those browsers.
I mean, this doesn't just apply to what we're talking about today, right? This applies full stop, anything in IT. If someone tells you everyone is doing insert whatever the hell they're about to talk to you about, they're lying to you, right? Everyone is not doing anything, right? It's all levels of scale and levels of change. There are some organizations out there that are 100% SaaS. Right? Absolutely, there are. Those organizations, both in our survey and just in general life, are an extremely small percentage of the total number of organizations that we talk to. Not just that we talk to, that anyone talks to, that exist. Equally, not quite a smaller percentage, but it's still a fairly small percentage of customers who are telling us they don't do anything with software as a service. Okay, those companies both exist, but most organizations are at neither end of those scales. This is a classic bell curve, just like most things, right? Most organizations are somewhere in this mix, which is why the hybrid application thing is really where we land and kind of where we talk. The fact that most organizations are in this world where some of their applications are going to be installed, and the outlook for that is that's going to be the case for quite a long time. Those same organizations are getting a growing percentage of applications that are available as SaaS, right? But they need in this transitionary time, let's say we'll make it to 100% SaaS eventually, but when is eventually? That's the thing to think about from your own company. So it's dealing with this change while it's happening. You can't just flick a switch and go 100% on-prem in a data center without using any public cloud to 100%. I don't even need public cloud anymore because all of my applications are delivered as SaaS. Why would I need infrastructure in the public cloud? I don't even need it. I'm consuming 100% of my applications as SaaS. I need no infrastructure. Very, very unlikely you're going to make that decision unless you are a brand new company with maybe 5 employees and you've just begun.
Yeah.
Hopefully that didn't alienate anyone in my answer.
Well, thanks for that. I'm not seeing any other questions come in, so if anyone has one, put it in quickly. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you all. There was a lot of people on the call today, so I want to thank you all for joining us. I hope it was useful. We've had some good feedback already on it, so thank you for that. And thank you, Chris, for taking us through that. And
Yeah, I've just seen
any,
your question, your comment, Lee. Thanks for the 2x shout out.
yeah,
Uh, Keep it real.
yeah, that's really good. So thanks for that. So yeah, any closing words from you, Chris, before we finish up?
No, no. Well, yes. The the choice is what the IT guy deals with, or the IT person deals with. The simplicity is what your end users need to deal with. You need the correct combination of those, and hopefully, we've shown you that that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and then there's a portfolio of things to help you do that security in depth, to get that application delivery, regardless of how you've got your applications laid out, whether they're local, whether they're SaaS. That there are something that we have that maybe you want to take a look at and see how we can do it. So thanks again for your time today. We will send out the links to the webinar to you all once we've got those uploaded. It normally takes a couple of days, so you can relook at it. The links to the downloads, as I said, are in the questions. So please take a look at those. Join the technical preview for PBI Private Access. We'd love you to be a part of that. I'd love to get your feedback on that. And thank you all for your time. And with that, we'll finish the webinar for you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Chris.
everybody.
Bye bye.